Hey, what is going on, guys? So episode 3 of Mute is going down tonight. Episode 1, we populated the system with the majority of the components. Episode 2, we did all of the custom sleeving. I'll link both of those down below if you happen to miss them. But episode 3 has been a little bit delayed because of the NVIDIA launch and a few other pieces of content that I wanted to get out before episode 3. So episode 3, we will be putting in the custom loop. So all of the hardline tubing. I've already done the majority of the prep, so all of the water cooling prep, and that basically involved just flushing the radiator and then both the CPU and GPU block, making sure that we get all of the impurities and little pieces of metal. I did notice specifically with the radiator that there was quite a lot of impurities and little pieces of metal that definitely didn't want to get caught in the CPU or GPU fin stack. So always a good idea to do that. I just didn't bother filming it because, let's be honest, it's a bit boring pouring distilled water into a radiator. But the next order of business is mounting the pump res combo inside the case. And I have thought about where I am going to mount it, and I've really sort of just settled on doing a bit of a DIY sort of solution on this bracket here. It is pretty cool that they have this bracket. It really is sort of just focused towards water-cooled builds and whatnot. They do have this sort of single slot here for 2 mounting points, but if you see here, mine has 4 mounting points, and I'd probably rather do it here just so it's closer to the panel and further away from the motherboard and whatnot. But that's going to be the first step, and I did want to announce that I will be using PrimoChill's View. Now, in episode 1, I spoke out to you guys and I said, look, I am planning on using PrimoChill's View Fluid. Let me know what your experience has been down below with this stuff, because it really has been quite mixed. I know Bitwit Kyle didn't really have a good experience here. Jay's 2 Cents has had mixed sort of reviews with this. And then Paul from Paul's Hardware didn't have a really good experience with his build. So why am I trying this? Well, if they didn't release this, which is the Primo Prep, I wouldn't be trying this at all. It's really not worth the hassle. But I am interested to see, have they fixed all the issues? If you do put this in your loop beforehand, can that prevent the PrimoChill View from gunking up and doing all that horrible stuff to your hardware? Because I certainly don't want to be doing that afterwards, but if I have to, I will. At the end of the day, it's more of a bit of a content piece for you guys to see, can you safely use this stuff if you do throw in a run with the Primo Prep loop prep. So basically, it says to run the Primo Prep for 72 hours with distilled water. So basically that's the first thing we're going to do after the loop is constructed. Instead of just chucking the View fluid in there, we're going to put some distilled water in there with a few drops of this. I think it actually says to do all of it. So we're going to try that, and when we tear down the system in a couple months, we'll see how those blocks are doing, and hopefully I should have an answer for you guys whether it is worth using this stuff with the Primo Prep stuff in there. All right, time to mount this guy. Alright guys, so the pump res is now mounted on the side bracket, and overall I am really happy with how that looks. I like how it fills up the rest of the case, and I think once we get the coolant in there, it'll definitely look pretty nice. Now, when I initially mounted it, I did come across one issue, and that's that the whole thing was sort of sagging downwards from the reservoir end, and that was even with just no coolant in there, so I can't imagine what that would have looked like when I filled that up. But basically how I fixed that was just to put a couple spaces on this end, so that way it pushes this side down a little bit and then it pushes this side up. And the clearance for the reservoir and the graphics card is going to be very interesting as well. As you can see, there's not much clearance here for the first PCI Express slot. I'm betting that we'll be able to use this port straight into the GPU. And that's going to look pretty epic, I think. But that'll be our next step, to put the water block on the GPU and then see how everything fits. Then the radiator, then the CPU block, and then we'll get to the hardline tubing. Alright guys, so progress has been pretty slow, but that's mostly due to the tubes being so tightly compacted and so hard to run. As you can see, the CPU is all done and we've got the GPU pretty much done as well. We've got one tube installed there. I've actually bent the second tube, which will connect to that side of the radiator, which I've also got a Y splitter coming out of. The problem now is that I don't know where to put this, the goddamn drain. Where do I put this in such a tightly compact system where there's barely any room to run any more tubing? I actually had a couple ideas. So, alright, so you guys might be able to see that Y splitter back there. So it splits off to this tube here, which is meant to go down and to the GPU here. I've done the majority of it, which is this tube here. So as you can see, GPU will go up and then we'll connect to that part. Now I haven't bothered finishing this because I don't know what to really do with the drain port. Now the first idea with this was to sort of put it behind the 24-pin motherboard cable, but there simply is just not enough room. The thing is just too long. Now the second idea was to run it up and then drill a hole through the top here and then have this sort of poking out, or just the top of it poking. But again, it's just too long. The third idea, and the idea which took me about 3 hours to come up with, is I'm gonna try and mount it towards the front here and just run a tube from here up and then into the Y splitter. For that though, I do really want to wait until I have some soft tubing, because there is like a wacky combination of bends that I have to make. It has to be a 180, then a 90, and then it has to go downwards. And to get this thing in the front of the case comfortably, I really do need to use soft tubing for that. So I'll get my hands on some matte black soft tubing so you can't really see it, but I don't actually have any of that here, which means that I have to wrap up this episode, unfortunately. Overall, we did get a lot done, and I guess that's the sort of point of a build log, I guess, is to show the process and not just the end product. So guys, that's going to do it for this episode, and don't forget to drop your comments down below on what you think of the build so far, and if you have any recommendations on how to make it better, I'm always open for critique. As I said, in the next episode, we're going to be finishing off all the tubing, including the fill and drain port at the top. I'm also going to be finishing off a lot of the sleeving and the rest of the power cables that need to be completed now that we have some more parts in there. Next episode should go up in a few days because honestly, that's not a whole lot of work. So make sure you are subscribed. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I have a ton of mess to clean up, as you can see, and I'll see you all in the next one.